Hello and welcome to another edition of EdVision. This is Dulip Deostale. Today we're going to be talking to a colleague of mine from France, and Sabine St. Rose. She's over here. She's going to be talking about internationalization and the impact in terms of France. And so I'd like to welcome her. Hello, how are you?
Bonjour, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for inviting me to this little talk and reflection.
Okay, thank you so very much. I'm going to be asking you some questions. I have some questions written up. I've shared those with you, and I just want your ideas in terms of where education, international education, is going, and your perspectives. I want you to think beyond in terms of what all is happening. Let me get a little bit of sense of what is happening with international education in terms of France. What are you seeing in terms of the movement and mobility of students coming to France as a destination? What are some of the things that France has to offer these students and opportunities for them to, in terms of their future? Go ahead.
So, for me, in terms of the future of higher education and internationalization in France, I think one of the factors is that it's becoming more and more um, permeable. I think universities are evolving from a position of ivory tower of knowledge
Mm-hmm.
to stakeholders of society. The teaching and learning is evolving, and there's more and more linked with the also private sector, with the industry, not
Mm-hmm.
just for tech transfer like research universities do,
Right.
but also in the techniques that the university is using, the technology, but also even in management and innovative tools that are being used. So there was in France a very strong divide between the public and the private sector,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's evolving and it's much more porous. Also, in the way we interact with society, I think, again, with tech transfer, research universities used to more push some technologies forward about making this new great robot, for example. But is that an end in itself? Now, fundamental research and applied research
Right.
are changing a little bit, and if we are going to make an impact in society, a lot of university leaders are now thinking, okay, how do we analyze better the demand of society? How do we respond? Instead of push
Mm-hmm.
for our things, and this is a dialogue that is starting, and the university is becoming more of an interface, which wasn't the case before. Regarding the question on mobility, France, of course, due to its history and also history of colonization,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of mobility, historically, there has been a lot of students coming from different countries in Africa
Mm-hmm.
or in Asia, with where the French presence and language was very strong.
Right.
And then we had, of course, the Erasmus program, we still have, and that meant that a lot of European students
Mm-hmm.
were mobile and coming to France, which is a big host destination. But now what we're seeing is that the students who come do not necessarily seek or need the French language to study, because more and more programs are actually taught in English. They
Mm-hmm.
come for a specific area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
They come for the research equipment that
Right.
is being offered to them. We still have more degree-seeking mobility at master's level.
Mm-hmm.
Erasmus can happen definitely at bachelor level, but it's less important.
Mm-hmm.
What we hope is that we can have a true diversity and mixity
Mm-hmm.
in terms of mobile students. And the recent ministry decision that non-European students would pay for fees has been very disruptive in our higher education landscape.
Okay.
Education in France is a right. It's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be free, available to everyone. So for a master's degree, you would pay 300 euros per year.
Mm-hmm.
And now, after much debate, it is going to be paying for non-European students, for students whose family are not paying taxes in
Right.
Europe, and providing resources for the system. So I'm not sure how that will play out, but a lot of people anticipate some important impact with our link with the Francophone world
Mm-hmm.
that is usually um, having less resources and means of revenue that are more limited. So will that have an impact also on our diplomacy and relationship with these countries?
Okay.
Is something quite interesting, because it has always been for France a soft diplomacy,
Yes.
diplomatie d'influence. So are the economic reality or choices that have been made going to have an impact on that diplomacy and place of France in the world? Then we will see.
Right. One of the things which, especially Anglophone countries, have always prided themselves as they receive international students is they have contributed to the economy. And that, obviously, with the notion of what you have just talked about, soft diplomacy, leads to the next question of the economic impact. Would France consider it as something along those lines, as the contribution of these non-Europeans coming in, how it impacts, especially with ageism taking place? The French population is growing older. You need a younger workforce. Where is this workforce going to come from? Are there efforts to make it more easier for students to come over, both from the visa perspective, education perspective, and as you've highlighted, the cost aspect? What are some of the things in terms of discussion at the French, at the ministry level, or at the political level?
Well, there has been this debate about how do you measure the revenue from international students.
Right.
Is it just because of the fees, or also because of all the money they spent on site and how they participate in the economy? So there are more and more voices that go in that way. But it has not been chosen
Right.
as a important argument enough to change the ministry decision. How we deal with the birth rate is a bit different from other European countries. For example, we have a much higher birth rate than Germany, for example, because of a lot of social help towards young families. And in terms of the workforce, again, our history is impacting our policies, because we have had that tradition of a workforce coming from the former French colonies in Africa and North Africa, with different policies of integration that could be definitely discussed. But this is what we have been relying on more, and not looking like some other countries, for example, Canada, that I know a bit more, on selected immigration with very targeted groups and some adaptation of points and things like that. So it has had a different angle in terms of how we deal with that. But probably this is now a time of shifting and adaptation, and we will go towards a more probably North American model or type of selection compared to what we had. It has already evolved, and it's going to evolve even more.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Another question which I think all universities are being challenged today is, we have a generation which is very what we call mobile natives. They think differently. They rely on technology tremendously. What is it that universities need to be doing to cater to these students who are going to be coming in, both from the pedagogical perspective, the methodology perspective, and the career perspective? So there are all these multiple things at place, which would mean institutions have to respond, to be, in a certain sense, let's call it agile for what lies ahead. What is it that universities should be focusing on in terms of their own strategy and their own development as they move forward?
I think you're totally right. I think universities need to be much more agile, and this is very much true for the French system, which is, famously known for its bureaucracy. We are doing better and making progress, but we're not totally agile as institutions.
Hmm.
So I think we need to readapt our, for example, accreditation system of diplomas with the ministry that is going in every 5 years
Right.
only, and we could not be very flexible in
Hmm.
terms of new programs, new bachelor's and master's level that would be offered to the students. And so we could not adapt very quickly to the job market. I think this has to be fundamentally reviewed and transformed so
Hmm.
that we can be more agile and think of preparing as best as we can the job for the jobs of tomorrow that didn't exist yesterday.
Right.
But I do believe that probably the universities will have to think more in terms of skills, transversal skills, more than core job skills and technicity on a very specific aspect.
Hmm.
French universities did pride themselves for many, many years in making very educated, very good experts in some
Hmm.
fields and not very adaptable people.
Right.
They expertise what was more valued more than adaptability. And that I think that considering the current job market and considering the reality of this generation, we need to work much more on that transversal aspect and adaptability than on the expertise.
Hmm.
But I do not agree with the question, with the notion of mobile natives. What does that mean exactly? Is everybody going to be mobile really? I would really question that notion because even though, for example, Europe is extremely proud about its Erasmus program, which has moved millions of students. However, in institutions which are performing quite well, like mine, it's only 4% of the students per year who actually have access to that type of mobility, physical international mobility we're speaking.
Okay.
So is it really going to be that? For me, being really mobile is being sort of adaptable. And I think, for example, one of the pedagogical aspect that educators in international education should think about is what we see emerging right now is virtual exchanges.
Right.
It's where two classes are collaborating on one project together. They cannot be mobile physically, but thanks to technology, they cooperate, collaborate, and deliver a report, a product, a robot, whatever it is. And they have learned tremendous skills, whether intercultural, digital, and also in their core subject. So that for me is the most interesting mobility, in fact,
Okay.
angle of
Right.
mobility.
Yeah, mobility is precisely what you have said. It is how technology is used to address a generation which is very comfortable with technology. If you look back X number of years, technology was not part of the whole system. It's like, okay, it's this additional thing. Today's student feels very comfortable with the use of technology, how he or she participates in all these projects, which are kind of across countries and across borders. They're very comfortable with it, working on teams which are, distributed all over. So there's not much as a challenge for them.
In America, maybe. In France, not everybody is used to collaborate internationally and distantly at all.
No, but the idea being that the other side, which is joining in, they are comfortable, and we're trying to bring in others. Yes, it will take some time, but the other definition of mobile natives is a generation which depends on mobile, in terms
devices.
of devices in terms of their education. Where whichever way you want to interpret it, if they want to take their class from home or if they want to go elsewhere or how learning happens, that aspect, that comfort level is much, much higher in this coming generation than in the current and the previous generation. So that is the other definition of how one can be inclusive.
I understand, but just to conclude, what it would be interesting for me is to see how much this generation will be really mobile, will be really agile,
Right.
will be really able to adapt. And I hope that the mobile devices will be used appropriately by educators to equip them with that ability, and that mobile just doesn't mean just connected in a way, but goes a bit deeper than that.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Thank you. Thinking ahead in terms of what is happening with education, where do you see education in France or across Europe? You're involved in a lot of initiatives across Europe. Where do you see education going, or the role of education, especially with so many competing aspects from the political side, from the funding side, from the kind of students who are joining in? What now becomes the role of education down the road?
The role of education is, for me, to make citizens of a society that would be equipped to integrate and succeed in this society. So I think our role is now maybe to compete a bit less and collaborate a bit more.
Okay.
And there are strong initiatives in Europe that are being developed, like the European university networks. And even if it's very much a prototype from the European Commission right now, I am looking forward to its development to see if we can collaborate better as networks, international networks. Right. That would not be just Ivy Leagues, right, of peers, but integrated, inclusive consortia that would work together to bring knowledge and science and citizenship in European citizens, and in collaboration also with the rest of the world. So I hope it's going to go in that direction.
Well, I hope so too. Well, thank you so very much. It has been wonderful talking to you, and thank you for sharing your views on this EdVision series. And on this note, I would like to say thank you to all our listeners and everybody else. I hope you've been watching this. This has been truly exciting. So thank you and goodbye.